Hare Krishna. So, welcome everyone to our Gita discussions. So, today we are going to just take one theme from the third chapter for our discussion, based on these series of verses where Krishna speaks to Arjuna about how to control, how to conquer the enemy of lust. Okay, so we know these verses in the Gita, which commence from 3.36. Where Arjuna is asking about this enemy of lust and what is it that forces one to do things against one's own will. So Krishna starts by talking about Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, Rajoguna Samudbhavaha, Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyena Miha Vairinam, right? And then he says the sitting places of the lust. He says, Indriyani Mano Buddhir Asya Dishtana Muchyate. He's saying that the sitting places of lust are the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. All these places get contaminated by lust, and they cover the intelligence of the living entity. And then 3.41, he says, Tasmato Indriyanyado Niyamya Bharatarshava Papmanam Prajayichenam Jnana Vijnana Nashana. So Krishna, in this particular 41st verse of the Bhagavad Gita, is essentially asking Arjuna that, I'm just reading the translation of Srila Prabhupada, that, therefore Arjuna, the best of Bharatas, in the very beginning, curbed this great symbol of sin by regulating the senses and slay the destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Right, so he's talking about regulating the senses. He's saying that that is the way in which we could conquer this enemy called as lust. So this is the basic point made by Sri Krishna. Niyamya Bharatarshava. He's saying Tasmato Indriyanyado. So everything begins with the senses. Everything begins with the senses. So the theme for today is how the reference point for anything starts with the body. Because Krishna is, though the senses and the sense object are lowest in that hierarchy, right? Because later in 3.42, Krishna says, Indriyani Paranyahur Indriyebhya Param Manaha Manasastu Parabuddhe Yo Buddhe Paratastu Saha. That means higher than the senses is the mind, and then higher than that is the intelligence, and higher than the intelligence is the Atma itself. But still, Krishna has said that you have to begin by regulating the senses. Now, what does it mean to regulate the senses? Okay, so this is what we would be talking today. So the theme is sincerity, because it's considered like if you want to conquer this enemy of the Atma, that is lust, and you have to regulate the senses, then it is all about how you succeed in spiritual life. We talk about sincerity, but here if you see carefully, sincerity has been defined as regulating the senses, because it all begins with that, right? So what does actually sincerity or regulating the senses mean? So I'm going to make only 3 points today. The first thing is that sincerity is connected to resources. Second thing is that sincerity is connected to samskaras. And third is that sincerity is connected to environment, okay? The environment where we are. So when Krishna is saying here that one needs to regulate one's senses, basically this means 3 things we will have to do with the senses. One is to ensure that they have resources. I'll explain this point. The second is that they need the good samskaras. And the third thing is that they need the right environment. All 3 are important. Okay. And since this topic is obviously related to disciplining, so the focus is also in context of training, raising children, etc. Okay. So let's start with the easy one first, samskara. So just like if you see carefully, training children means what? Generally, training and raising children doesn't actually mean philosophy. right? So almost all of us in this group are parents, and we all know that when we are raising our children, it's not so much necessary to give them philosophical classes. Certainly, they will hear philosophy once a while, but the main thing for children is the discipline of the senses. And that is what is called a samskara, correct? Because that regulates the senses. Right? It is about that action. That means how you behave with your senses. That training is much more important than any bhashan giri, right? So we don't have to give too many lectures to a child. On the other hand, it is about ensuring that the child is raised with the good samskaras, which will ensure that the senses are regulated. So samskaras, as we all know, are twofold. One is discrete and one is continuous. Discrete means like certain ceremonies. So certain ceremonies are observed throughout the raising of the child, which are discrete events. And continuous is how he eats, how she sleeps, when you get up, how you behave in terms of cleanliness, routine, discipline. All this is samskara. So the point is that only when the senses are regulated, there is willpower. So because Krishna is talking about tasmat from indriyanyado niyamya bharatarshava, we are talking about this point of willpower. So generally we may think that willpower comes from just intellect or something. No, actually willpower comes from these three things only. From your samskaras it comes, from your resources it comes, and it also comes from your environment you are. So the first one we are saying is that how willpower comes from samskaras, because if a person has been raised nicely in childhood, then the willpower to withstand various temptations later in life actually becomes easy, because the person is grounded well in samskaras. So even if there are situations that are kind of very difficult or alluring the senses, the person will be able to push it, right? He will be able to withstand that onslaught. Okay, so that is about the first point. The second point which I want to talk is about how willpower or regulating the senses is connected to resources. So let's pay attention to this. This is perhaps not something that we would easily understand, but it is a fact, right? So for example, there is a statement that says Daridra Guna Dosha Nashi. I'm sure you must have heard this. Daridra Guna Dosha Nashi means, okay, so someone is saying that the audio is not too clear. So maybe I'll just try something else.
I'm just trying without my headphones. So maybe this would be better. I'm not sure. So someone can just confirm if this is slightly better. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I've always realized that with the headphones, it tends to be sort of, okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the point that we're making is Daridra Gunadosha Nashi means that when there is lack of resources, then the good qualities also go away. So poverty actually brings in bad qualities as well in an individual, right? Because when a person is poverty stricken, he becomes what we call in Hindi as lachar. That means he could do anything just to get to ensure he meets his two ends, right? So this is why resources become connected to this point. So when Krishna is saying regulate the senses, it doesn't only mean giving samskaras, that is obviously important, but it is also important to ensure that resources are available. So there is a folk tale in Mahabharata. This is a folk tale. This is not from the original Vyasa Mahabharata, but it is interesting nevertheless. So basically what happens is, so just like we know that when someone dies in a family, we see that when someone dies, then the others who are there in the family, they sometimes say that they don't want to eat, right? So you may have observed this. When there is death in someone's house, then the other family members, they insist that they don't want to eat. 1 or 2 days, they will always keep saying, no, I don't want to eat anything, and so on. But then you may have also seen that how other relatives and other neighbors or somebody will try to push some food to them, right? They will tell them, no, no, please take this. And something neighbors or some other acquaintances would bring some food and give these people and literally force it in their mouth or whatever. And then you will also see that initially a person may say, I will not eat, but eventually they will start eating only, right? So the idea here is your willpower obviously is connected to your resource, right? Resource as in this context, the resource becomes the body itself. Okay, you will say you will not eat, but then how long you will not eat? So you are forced by that situation to take care of the body only. So there is this folktale in Mahabharata that Gandhari, after the death of her 100 sons, she was wandering in Kurukshetra because she was there at that time. And she was refusing to eat for a very long time, saying that I will not eat, etc. But then after some time, it so happens after a couple of days, she feels actually very hungry. And then, so there is no food also easily available. So there is someone who says that there are some fruits on top of this tree. And it is said that so there are some piles of bodies which are over there. She climbs that and reaches her hand onto the fruit and starts eating it. And it is said Krishna comes at that time and smiles looking at that particular situation. The idea obviously being conveyed here is that no matter who you are, you may say that you will not eat or do something, but your willpower is tested by the resources. And the fundamental resource one has is the body, because as we said earlier, that's the first reference point from where everything is beginning, right? So unless, so how long can you maintain that? That's why you also see that there are many prayers in our scriptures where like Radharani is telling Krishna that I don't have any love for you, because if I had love for you, I would have given up my body by now, because Krishna is not there right now. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says this, right? Because I don't have any love for you, because if I had love for you, how would I still be maintained in this body? The idea is that when you are in the body, you're forced to give a lot of attention to that, right? One is forced to give attention to it. One has to feed the body, one has to do things for it. So even if there is a separation from the beloved, but that will not stop you from taking care of the body. So that's the point that we're making. Regulating the senses also means ensuring that it has enough resources, because without that resources, your willpower only will not come. Okay, so similarly, just like mundane education, like we have made this point many times. If you have college degree, then you can say that all this education is useless. Correct. That actually gives you that confidence. That only gives you the willpower when you have those resources. Like we have said many times before also. Somebody has wealth, he can say that wealth is nothing. Itna paisa vaisa iske piche bhagna. So that can be said only by a person who has wealth. Somebody who doesn't have anything cannot say that only, because he's actually struggling. So the willpower is coming from resources. And that is the fundamental thing that you are seeing in Bhagavad Gita in action, where the Pandavas are not having the resources only to fight, to rule the kingdom, right? They're not having the resources. And Krishna, that is why he is actually ensuring that, Krishna basically tells that, no, you all will have to fight. You will have to take your resources back. Because without that, you will not be able to function only in the world. So this is a very important part of regulating senses, ensuring adequate resources. Okay. So just to give a couple more examples on this, even political examples, etc. Sometimes people wonder when you see politics, like I'll just take a political example. This will make this point very clear. Like in BJP in Bengal, if you know what happened after the 2021 elections was that many of them started leaving and joining the Trinamool Congress, right? You know that. It's still happening. Many of the BJP workers, MLA, they started resigning and joining Trinamool Congress. The question is, why were they doing that? Were they not sincere to the BJP ideology? The answer is very simple. Their sincerity is affected by the resources, correct? So we all know that when the TMC party, when they won, they unleashed a terror on those who were supporting the BJP. So one of our devotees knew someone who was a supporter of BJP. So that person told this devotee that, Prabhuji, after the election, it was impossible for us to stay with the BJP, because these people were were just like currently the Islamists in Kashmir are targeting individual Hindus and shooting them. Similarly, I mean, that person earlier said that the Trinamool Congress would pinpoint who are helping BJP and attacking our families. So, so this person was kind of a devotee also, and he was connected to some devotees, and at the same time he was a BJP worker. So he made this point that hence we couldn't just stay only in this party. So many of them had to leave and join that Trinamool only. So you understand this. So this is an example to make this point that your willpower in terms of your ideology is connected to the resources you have. If you don't have resources, you cannot be sincere. You cannot have the willpower, right? And that is why, many times we see in our messages also, people in general, people keep saying that, oh, when the British were ruling India, so many Indians were helping the British and so on. So there is one historian who writes on this, saying that when the British were in India, actually there were only very few Indians, especially those who were kings, etc., the princely states, who were bribed by the British, who were truly traitors and British supporters. He says that almost all the common man was against the British rule only. But it was about your resources. There were people who didn't have anything with them. So many people, right? Because British had made such systems where you don't have anything. So when you don't have anything with you, and the only thing that is available is a job as a British servant, right? And thereby you can maintain your family, then what will you do? Very few people will be there, right? Who will say that to hell with my body, my ideology is only important. I will die, but I will not serve the British. That's not possible for any common man. I mean, if we think about it very carefully, even most of us, we would, if we were forced in such a situation, we would perhaps take what we would call at that time as the most pragmatic decision to serve the British Raj, rather than, so that at least our family can be maintained. So again, the same point is coming here if you see carefully. When you have resources, you can be sincere to your idea. Without resources, you cannot be sincere. You are forced to go away from that ideology. Okay. So similarly, so many things, if you see, even within a family, like imagine a new daughter-in-law comes home. Okay, so she is very sincere. She has to serve, she likes to serve her in-laws, husband, everything. But let us say some of her basic needs and concerns are not being met, whatever it may be, in terms of living standards, etc. Then you will see that eventually at one point of time, she will break down. She will say that let everything go to hell. I don't care. I'm not going to, do all these things for all these people. So why is her sincerity breaking? If you carefully see, it is just because of lack of resources. What she needs is not being provided for. So then how long is she going to continue this? Okay. So the point here, so I hope we have conveyed this point well. If you see all these examples, the same thing comes, right? So when Krishna is saying regulate your senses, basically that means your willpower is going to come when you have your adequate resources. Without that, you will never have the willpower to do anything great. It's going to be very difficult. That's maybe someone like some Bhagat Singh in a freedom struggle will give up his body, or some rare examples will be there of someone who will not mind themselves getting destroyed, but will continue to serve their ideology with full enthusiasm. But a common man will obviously break down. Okay, so this is the second point in terms of regulating the senses. The third point about regulating senses and ensuring that there is willpower. This is again, especially, I mean, all these are also very much applicable in our raising of our children. So as I said earlier, the first point was samskaras. So I made that point very clear, right? Like how a child is raised, that would have a lot of bearing on his or her ability to generate willpower later in life. That's the first point. The second point is if the child has adequate resources. That means if the child has proper education, if the child has success in life, then success in life as in whatever the child is able to do, whatever is his or her potential, if those resources become available to the child and he or she starts excelling in that, then also the willpower and enthusiasm becomes a lot, right? You will see this, that and this is true with everybody, huh? Like if you see the Mahabharata also, you will see so many occasions that after the battle is over, when Krishna and Arjuna are going back to the tent, you will see that how if they did a good fight, right? If Arjuna fought very nicely and right, he destroyed certain enemies or whatever, then both of them are in a very jolly mood at that time when they go back. You can read so many sections, like if you see the death of Jayadratha. After Jayadratha is killed, Krishna and Arjuna are driving back. Oh my God, Krishna is praising Arjuna like anything for what he accomplished. And Arjuna also feels a great sense of satisfaction and increased mental strength by the fact that he was able to do this thing. He was able to fulfill his vow and kill Jayadratha successfully. So there is something amazing about success, as in success in terms of resources. When you are able to do what you are supposed to do, what you are capable of doing, that actually increases your willpower and enthusiasm in life. Okay. On the other hand, when you are not able to accomplish it, then automatically your willpower, your determination goes down also. So we see this very, very clearly. You can see this. If a person is, so generally, even among devotees, you will see that those who are doing well professionally or something, they also tend to be very good devotees as well, because there is some resource, there is some, it's not just about the money, it's about that capacity, fulfillment, and so on, that actually spills over in the spiritual realm and services also, that person starts doing well in general. On the other hand, failure puts a person down. That's why we were saying earlier, daridra guna dosha nashi. Daridrata actually destroys so many good qualities, right? Now the last point. The last point is also very important, especially this is also very much connected to children. The last point being that your willpower and your ability to regulate senses depends on the environment in which you are. Okay, environment. That means your surroundings. Okay, so this again matters so much, because if you see carefully, this especially matters when we talk to many children or people who are growing up, who have grown up in devotee families, but later they are, they go to, see now again, at a particular age, every child has to go to a high school, college, etc., right? So when you go there, that environment which is there, if that environment is, yeah. Okay. So so I was making this point that environment is considered very important for anyone to maintain his sanity and everything, right? Because if you see, for example, if you see today's environment in many colleges, etc., it isn't very conducive to many children, and they will have to really fight it out to maintain their sanity and their willpower, right? So there are so many trends that are there increasingly in modern universities, colleges, etc. Like one or two I'll just mention here, that increasingly there is a lot of talk among many people, devotees or so many people who talk in terms of not getting married, boys and girls. They feel that no, I don't want to get married only. So these kind of, you may have seen the news recently about this one girl in Gujarat who's getting married to herself. So it's a very strange news. And interestingly, I also saw a news where there was one lady who got married to herself and got divorced also. She got bored of self-marriage. So in that also, I don't know what divorce means, but so all this keeps happening. So why I'm saying this is because the environment also makes a person lose willpower. So just like there were studies in terms of the Catholic Church, where it was found out that a very high proportion of the Catholic priests tend to be homosexual. Okay. they tend to be like that because of the environment. They tend to be like that because of the environment. What is the environment? That they are always surrounded by those clergy only, right? Those men. They don't have any they don't have any. So the environment is like that, right? So there was some papers also that made some study in this context, which says that when any individual is too much in association with members of the same gender, then this homosexuality, for example, it increases, that tendency increases a lot. So it may be boys hostel, girls hostel, etc. in these places. So why I'm making this point is that this environment is there in the world. Children will have to face it nevertheless. Okay, I mean, no matter what, they will have to face it. So what is the solution to that? An important solution is to talk these things. So especially as children come to teenage, etc., one will have to spend time to talk about all this to them very openly. Okay, because if we don't talk only about all this, if you think that certain topics are taboo, whether it is all these issues, right? Why to get married? What is all this homosexuality? How? Because it's not that it's only genetic, right? It also depends on environment. If someone is there in such an environment, then that happens also. Okay, and these things are actually increasing in great numbers in India, and many devotee children have also encountered such experiences whenever they went to college. Okay, that's what many of our senior devotees also say, who counsel and who talk to young people. Okay, so these things are there, and the only one solution is to talk it out very frankly early on. Okay, so for this, I heard of a nice example once, when to talk about something. So we have to talk about something to our children or anyone you want to speak to when everything is going good. So just like, for example, let's say you don't want to have a dog at home because if there is a dog at home as a pet, then it is very unclean. It's just moving around here and there and increases the uncleanliness. If this is your goal, then you cannot start talking this to your child when your child comes and says that I want a dog now at home. I'm just giving an example because that would be too late, right? Because the child has already decided that he or she wants a dog at home. Now, if you start talking about why we should not have a dog and start preaching, it doesn't make any sense. So one has to talk when things are in sanity. So just like an example is given, just like a woman who is there when she's going to get married, she has decorated herself nicely. But even after she has decorated herself nicely, she sits in front of the dressing table for the last half an hour and she's making some final touch up, right? Some part where the powder is not in the right proportion, she's refining it. Whatever the nail polish or, whatever other accessories are, she's fine tuning each of that. That fine tuning takes half an hour. Okay, so on whom is the fine tuning done? The fine tuning is done on this lady who's already very well dressed and decorated. So similarly, the fine tuning of all the understanding can be given to the child when he's properly situated. Okay, so on the other hand, if a woman is wearing some tattered cloth, then you cannot, if you go and tell that woman, now I want to decorate your face, then that's a joke because her cloth itself is so tattered. What is this decoration? Decoration has no meaning only on her. Similarly, one cannot say that I will talk to children about some issue when they have already reached a point either of no return or they are facing that problem very severely in their life. Okay. So there's no point. One will have to talk all these things in advance only. Okay. And one will have to talk in such a way also that the child is not threatened so much and he is very comfortable, he or she, with it, right? Because there are, if you see, each of us will have our own experiences in this with our children as we raise them. But it is inevitable that at a point in time, our children would have to go somewhere out either for education or for certain purposes. And at that time, the last minute one couldn't start too many conversations, and many things will have to be done up ahead. Okay, so my point in making all this is that the sincerity and the willpower to control the senses is certainly connected with the environment. Mhm. So just summarizing the 3 points that we made today, we are looking at 3.41 Bhagavad Gita, Tasmatvam Indriyanyado Niyamya Bharatarshaba, which says that start with regulating the senses. So the reference point for the Atma also is the body. Though Krishna has said that the senses are the most inferior in that hierarchy, Krishna has said that start from the senses. Okay, and regulating the senses doesn't simply mean saying no, no, no to the senses. That's not the point. That is right. Regulating the senses has three components to it. I said the first component is to have samskaras. Uh, because samskaras will ensure the inner strength to withstand anything. The second component of regulating senses is resources. When you have resources, you can be sincere in your willpower. If you don't have resources, you cannot be. We saw several examples for that. Whether it is politics, whether it is the British India, whether it is anything. I mean, unless you have resources, you cannot, maintain your so-called sincerity. Poverty gives rise to bad qualities. We saw that quote also. And the final point we saw is that your sincerity is connected, your willpower is connected to the environment you are in. Okay, that environment includes the people where we are, the food we eat, and so on. So generally for devotees, it's kind of we take care of our environment very nicely. But I was making this point about education and so on. I mean, obviously, I had a lot of interest or concerns about this. Also, because I have two children, two boys who are in their teenage, and they're exploring various colleges, etc. for them. So this worry and this thought is always in the mind about the kind of environment they will bang in when they enter a particular college. So I said that our environment also decides on sincerity. Most people fail in a very tough environment. So that's why there needs to be a lot of discussion a priori. And hopefully, with the right samskaras and the right resources, a person will be able to navigate successfully, exhibiting a good amount of willpower, so that they don't crash in their pursuit of self-realization, right? So this is where we are. So we can take some questions or comments. Yeah, Haribol. Dinabandhu Chaitanya Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam. Thank you. Am I audible, Prabhu?
Yeah, very well.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Very interesting points you brought up, actually, especially the point on resources. That's very, very relevant. So just one question, Prabhu. Actually, two questions. One is, so this point on, what is that you said? Daridra Guna something, right? Poverty.
Guna Dosha Nashi means Daridrata destroys your good qualities. This is a statement, actually.
Right.
Got the reference, I'll find and put it up. But it's a very common statement in some Niti Shastra or something.
Okay.
It destroys good qualities.
Yes, Prabhu. So on an individual level, I think, yes, certainly, till we have that, that Daridrata, it is not possible to progress materially or spiritually. But then if you look from a societal perspective, I have heard in some, I think Govind Prabhu mentions also that poverty is also part of, Krishna's creation. Like when you see in the Western countries, I think they have artificially eliminated poverty. Yes, that's true. But then you see the flip side of that also, like Govind Prabhu gives the example, the prasadam has to be just thrown down the drain and things like that, right? So I mean, I'm just trying to understand, how do you see from a societal perspective that poverty, is needed also, because it's part of the creation, and at the same time, at the individual perspective, it is a curse.
Okay, see, two things. See, first of all, there is nothing like there have to be people who are necessarily so poor. It's not like that. See, there are two different things. One is automatically in society, there will be some people, no matter how hard you try, who will tend to be poor, right? I mean, either they will destroy their own resources and so on. So even in the Western world, even in America, etc., you will come across bums on the street who are begging for pounds and pennies and all, right? I mean, I have also seen such videos or clippings where someone is, playing some guitar or something and is roaming with a hat, begging some dollars and so on. So basically, some amount of poverty is unavoidable because the world is like that. There will be some people who are determined to fall into it. But those people, such people who are poverty stricken, they will actually find it very difficult to exhibit any willpower. Let's come back to the point. We are not saying here that. So what we were trying to say is regulating the senses in order to achieve self-realization. So when you talk about self-realization, for a sadhaka to go on that path of self-realization, he needs his resources, his requirement to be met. If that is not going to be met, he's going to be disturbed only. He's not going to walk on that path. Okay, so such people who are there, who are poverty stricken, how many of them come to spirituality or self-realization? Like if you see in our temples also, we are always interested in Shrestha only, right? We always talk about Shrestha preaching. You catch any preacher, if you tell him you have two options. Either you can preach to 5 people who are all very wealthy, well-to-do people in society, not necessarily wealthy, but stably situated in society, versus 100 beggars who are, who have actually nothing, they're just on the street, on the traffic light begging for food. Then whom do you think any preacher will want to preach to? Those 1 or 2 people who are, Shrestha, well-to-do, or the 100 beggars. So I think the answer is very clear, right? I mean, everybody will want to preach to that 1 or 2 people only. The reason being that only those people can do something in spirituality, even if they want to. These other 100 will exist because poverty will always be there in the world. That part, nobody is debating that. But they will take some time. They will take perhaps some lifetimes, because if you see carefully also, even in the kosha level, Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. So Anandamaya, or connection to spirituality, is best achieved when all the other koshas are satisfied, right? Reasonably. Not only Annamaya, Pranamaya, but even Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, when they are satisfied, only then Anandamaya actually opens up. So without the previous koshas being properly satisfied, nourished, those resources before they are met, you try to impose Anandamaya kosha on someone, he will not be, because his basic things are only not met. Are you getting the point? Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. So then when we hear examples like the Sudama, right? So that he says that Kwaham Daridra Papiya, and that verse comes, right? So do we take that as an exception, like, because Sudama for himself?
Without a doubt, that's an exception. I made that point, right? I made that point that somebody like Bhagat Singh may have been there, or some freedom struggle person would have been there, who didn't care for their body and family and sacrifice their life for the freedom struggle, fought the British. But how many people can be like that? The common man could not be like that, right? In Indian history. He was concerned about his family, na? Will he just destroy his family to drive the British out? It's very difficult. So it's just like that only. And by the way, if Sudama was poverty stricken, please remember his wife was not happy in that, right? She was thinking that good for our children, like this, being poverty stricken. She makes Sudama go to Krishna, right? Saying that, right? Why does she ask him to go? Because she wants wealth. So the point is, there may be one rare soul like Sudama who will be happy in that poverty, but even his wife is not so comfortable in that situation. I mean, and consider that she's Sudama's wife. She's not an ordinary man's wife. So certainly she was a great soul. But even she understood that this is not sustainable, at least for her children. So she knew that ye chalne nahi wala hai. So she told her husband, please go and get some wealth, do something so that this poverty goes away. So that's a fact. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Yes, true. One last point on the when to discuss with our kids, right? That last point you brought up. about, like, for example, what's happening in the colleges, or, like you gave the example of bringing a pet dog at home and things like this. So one thing is, yes, till they are in that situation, they may not be able to appreciate if, like, as you gave the example of that lady dressing up, and, so, if so you need to tell when they already have those access, or they are in that particular situation. But then, I'm just thinking, like, sometimes, like, if we, isn't that also, like, there has to be a right timing? Like, if we tell it too early, they are not able to appreciate, because, like, for example, in the Western world, they try to teach about, abuse, like physical abuse. They try to teach quite early. Maybe, much earlier than, what happens in India. So when the children aren't even aware of it, whereas, like, on the contrary, like, once they're into it, as you said, it may be even more difficult. So is there, like, when we should be telling them is also a right, tricky balance, right, Prabhu?
Yeah, I agree with that. See, so basically, different things would have to be spoken at different times, and everything is not spoken as a lecture, mind you. Things can be spoken as a matter of culture also. So let's take a simple example of pets at home. Okay, so see, from our Shastra perspective, we are very clear. Dogs and cats are welcome, but they are welcome in a large house. Large house, as in when people had a bungalow or a farm. People traditionally lived on a farm, right? So having a dog in the farm was always good, and people would feed the dog. All that is fine. Our problem is only when you bring the dog in the 700 square feet house, right? When you bring the dog in that and you keep it on the same bed as you are sitting, then we have a problem, because that goes against our cleanliness principle itself fundamentally, right? So the thing is, so these things are not, so everything is not given as a lecture, right? It is told as a matter of fact. So when we are talking about cleanliness, so certainly there will be situations where we will meet someone, our neighbor will be there, our child's friend in school will be there who has a dog at home, and our child will start talking to us about this, that, oh, this person has a dog at home. So we can just start a conversation at home, as in very, informally. Everything is not formal with children, right? Where you're sitting on a Vyasasan and giving a talk to them. It's very informal, where you're just sitting with them and talking it out, why we will not want to keep the dog in the bedroom the way that person keeps. So what are the cleanliness standards that we have? So I'm just giving an example. So the thing is that they're automatically in the child's dealing with the world, with the friends, with the schoolmates, with the neighbors, etc. These topics will automatically come up, where the child will even just mention about it, and then we need to start talking about that, right? Now, as far as the physical thing is concerned, someone has asked me on chat as well, when you start talking about these nitty-gritty things with boy and girl, etc. Yeah, so the thing is, see, different levels of discussion would be at different ages. Okay, so when they are, I would say that even when they are as young a boy and a girl as 9-10-year-old also, they should know things like that no one can touch them in certain places. They should know that, right? That part they should know. They need not know about sex life in great detail, but they should know what is acceptable touch, what is not acceptable touch. They should know how to deal with members of the opposite sex, right? They will be going to a school, 5th standard boy or a girl, also 6th standard boy or a girl. There will be other boys and girls also, right, in the school. So how to touch, how to interact with boys and girls, with the people of the same gender, opposite gender, those things, so we will have to talk it at that age. And certainly by the age of 14, nowadays, so in school only, in 9th standard syllabus, 10th standard syllabus, all this comes up in great detail. If you see the 10th standard syllabus of science in any board, there is everything is given. It's so much information. Perhaps I didn't have at the age of 20. That much information is there in the 9th standard, 10th standard biology textbook these days. So before they complete their school, they're going to know everything anyway, right? So when those things come also, I personally feel that as parents, the talk of these things have to be there, right? And also, when you discuss, that's why sometimes some scriptural stories also when you talk, like Ajamil story is there, or so many stories are there in our Shastra, right? Vishwamitra with falling to this Ramba, Menaka, etc. So many stories come up, right, in our scriptures. So as we tell these stories to our children also, which automatically comes. I mean, you open any book, if you are going to sit with 11, 12-year-old boy, girl, or whatever, if you are sharing some story from Shastra, some aspect of this comes only in the scripture. So at that time, we use that opportunity to informally discuss about this. And also when you go out in the streets, at least outside my house, if you go, it's like too many potential ajamils, right? Because boys and girls, the way they move around, etc. So these things we talk. And also in family, as you go ahead, you will see that there will be divorces, remarriage, and so on, right? Within family, within the society. So children will ask all this, what is all this happening? This person was with this lady, and then suddenly that lady went and another lady has come. So children are going to ask all this, right? So time to time, all this talk will have to be there. Like that.
Yeah. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. I mean, just on the topic of the dog, Prabhu, recently our neighbor in Bangalore, they got a pet dog, and then, they were actually inviting us for the dog's birthday. So, we were like shocked because they come from respectable Brahmin families and all. And then, we were in a very uncomfortable position how to say no because the daughters are friends with our kids. So, all kinds of trends are coming up. Really, it's hard, Prabhu.
Yeah, so you have to use that opportunity to talk to your own daughters about it. Why we may, even if we keep a dog, because you have a bungalow, there can be a dog outside, but the dog has some limit. I mean, the dog will not be in the bedroom on the bed with you, right? So there is some, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Shamlila, bro.
Hare Krishna, bro. Thank you very much. Prabhu, this thing, what you have spoken today, is this just related to self-realization or this is for material success also? That can be taken because the examples you have given about BJP, daughter-in-law, British rule, and all that. So it seems to me that we are talking also about the success in the material life. Is it true?
Okay. See, I'll tell you how it is all related to self-realization. The whole point is that unless your senses are regulated, Krishna says in 3.41, Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bharatarshava. Unless your senses are regulated, there is no way ahead. Now, what does it mean to regulate the senses? That is the question, right? Because we are talking about regulating senses. The regulating senses ka matlab kya hai? Okay, so one regulating senses, we know that like a tortoise withdraws, Krishna has given that example already, right? Like a tortoise withdraws the limbs, one should withdraw oneself when there is temptations. That is one thing. But regulating itself, regulation of senses, niyamya bharatarshava. So this regulation of senses has these three aspects to life. One is samskaras, because that is for the senses. Please remember, samskaras are for the senses. They are for the body. Similarly, the second thing we spoke is resources, because resources also regulate the senses. They pacify the senses, right? So I gave the other examples to also obviously indicate that your sincerity is proportional to your resources. The examples that I gave may be from politics, but they are connected to sincerity. Okay, so why is it that so many BJP workers, coming back to the same point, left that party after they lost BJP lost the Bengal election? Simple reason. They left because the opposition was literally gunning them down. And they knew that if they have to survive, they have to join hands with them. Otherwise, they will not survive. So the sincerity they had with that political ideology, why was it under threat? It was under threat because of lack of resources. Are you getting this point? So that is why I started saying, so that this principle is applicable everywhere. This principle is applicable to you and me also in self-realization. Correct? This principle is applicable to our children also in their self-realization. That means unless anybody has sufficient amount of resources, they can't maintain their sincerity. they will tend to cheat in life because you don't have only. So then you're forced to cheat. You're forced to, play around, because human nature is wanting to survive somehow or the other, right? Like I will tell you, there was this experiment done. Again, from this also we can learn the same thing. There was this experiment done where there was a monkey mother with a baby monkey, okay, put in the center of a place where there was a pool, and there was water was being that pool was being filled with water. So the mother monkey started lifting the baby monkey and climbing the pool. But at one point of time, the water started coming so much that the mother monkey put the baby monkey on her shoulders and started holding the pool. But then the water rose so much, because this was artificially being done to test, that at one point the mother monkey, what she did, she stood on the baby monkey, pushing the baby monkey in water and trying to save herself. The point is, was the mother monkey a sincere mother? Certainly she was. But why was her sincerity being affected? Because of lack of resource. She was fighting death. When you face death, what will you do? How much sincerity are you going to maintain when your life only is at stake? So this principle, whether it is to a BJP Bengal, whether it is to the mother monkey, whether it is to the Indian in the British era, applies to you, me, our children, to everybody. That our resources will determine our sincerity. So is the point clear? I mean, is it clear why these examples were given?
Yes. Prabhuji, this is very clear. This brings me to this question is that generally when we give examples to our kids, we basically try to tell them the things that how there were no resources, and in that kind of situation everybody has attained the success, like even in the family. And even for us, when we actually did not have money, the parents could not afford to actually send us to the the classes, and somehow or other, traveling on bicycle, we would go to the whole city here and there and try to get whatever education we can get, or collect the books, or take the second hand books, and all those things we tell the children. So basically, and actually, also now we are in a stage where my daughter is entering 11th, so we were going to various coaching classes also, and everywhere there are different success stories. So somebody is telling that one flower maker's child is coming every every day, is coming from 40 kilometers, and he said that I'm not going to return back home unless I'm going to get the MBBS seat. Somebody else is saying that I am not going to go back home unless I'm going to get JE seat. So there are many success stories which we are hearing from various people. And it is and generally the child is actually also understanding that the resources are not so important. It is more important means you have to be sincere, you have to work hard with whatever you have. So when this point is there, definitely what you are making the point is very important here. But how basically how to internalize this thing means maybe I am not able to understand the proper application of this, or maybe there is a little contradiction in this. You understand what I am saying?
I got it. Prabhuji, there are two things here. See, resources also, na Prabhuji, they are relative to a particular level of civilization. Like I'll just tell you what I'm saying. Okay, so please try to get this point. So just like if you see na Prabhuji, in a couple of generations before ours, even when we were small, etc., the amount of resources we had were very less compared to what our children have today. There is no question only about it. Like, I mean, I'll tell you, first time I entered a plane was at the age of 35. I entered an aeroplane. My children at the age of 15 have entered already a dozen times. So the point is, in that era, what best resources were there, we were getting. The resources we had in our childhood were perhaps nothing compared to what our children have today. But in that era, by and large, I mean, since you gave that example, most of us didn't have anything. Like if you go back, right? So the best of that was there. Perhaps, at some point of time, the best resource to have was a cycle. So everybody had a cycle and we were happy in that, right? Today, our children will not entertain a cycle. When I was 16, my father gave me a cycle and I was so excited about it. But today, a 16-year-old boy or a girl, you give the first cycle. First of all, cycle should have been given at the age of 7 or 8 nowadays. So why I'm making this point is, what is considered as sufficient resources change with time. It also changes with the status of the family. Please try to understand this. Status of family. That means, see, somebody is currently a vegetable and fruit seller. They may struggle to get a little ahead in resources and provide to their child. Their child will be happy also in that. But your child and my child cannot work at that level of resources. Are you getting it? Because now you're already used to a different level only of comfort, luxury, everything. That will not work only. Are you getting the point? So, see, we are just making a philosophical point here. Now, what becomes the sufficient resource? Obviously, that definition changes over time. It changes with family to family. It changes with generation to generation. Correct? So that will have to be kept in mind. So, right, the principle will remain. So see, again, that point is important to tell children. We will not tell children that, without any resource, you cannot be successful. As an inspirational point, you may tell them, but you have to have it at the back of your mind that without that sufficient thing, they cannot maintain that, especially if they are used to in a particular level of, comfort or situation. Are you getting what I'm saying? Is the point clear?
Yes, Prabhuji. So that means that what resources we had at our times is different from what resources they are going to have.
Obviously,
here
Prabhuji,
in
this
this
is
era.
changing time to time. This is changing, and we had the best in that era. Going by second class train was most comfort. I entered an AC train when I was 25-year-old first time. We never entered only AC compartment in our life, because this was not there only in childhood that we can enter AC compartment also. That was considered for somebody who was very rich. We would go by second class only, right? Sleeper in train and all. Most middle class people were used to like that. But today it is not like that, no? Today it is not like that. So the definition of resource also keeps changing with time a little bit, and then you cannot go back. See, that's an important point. You cannot go back. So just imagine.
And those who are like successful are basically exceptions. What you said, that there are going to be certain exceptions, like those who don't have the resources. And
that will be there, but we are talking about general people now, and even in the context of the Mahabharata, right? The Krishna is encouraging Arjuna and all the Pandavas to get resources only. Nowhere is telling them. See, again, this is why, if you see, let's go back to the Bhagavatam prayer where Kunti is praying, Janmaishwarya Shruta Shrivir Yedamana Madappuman. Right? Now, if you carefully consider that prayer of Queen Kunti to Krishna, it's a philosophical prayer. If you see, the Pandavas have beauty, they have wealth, they have everything with them. Okay, so it's not hypocrisy that she's praying like that, obviously. She genuinely feels that, when you feel that I have nothing, then Krishna is approachable. But that's a very internal state of feeling that I have nothing. It doesn't really mean that externally one should have nothing, only then one goes to Krishna. No, it's not like that. The Bhagavatam is full of all kings and queens and great personalities who are devotees. Hardly we have examples of, even if somebody is a beggar, they are like sannyasi beggar kind of, they are not some ordinary beggar on the street who was a failure in life and who, those examples would be very, very less, you will see. Are you getting the point that I'm saying?
Yes, Prabhuji. Perfect.
Yeah,
thank you.
Patit Pavan Prabhu, or who's that?
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I audible, Prabhu?
No, you are not. There is some problem.
Hare Krishna.
The voice is.
Can you hear me?
No, you'll have to type it on chat. You're not
okay.
Audible. Sorry. Okay, Yamuna Jivan Prabhu, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Prabhuji, I had this question about the same resources and sincerity. So my question was like, what is the Krishna's, or for that matter, even spiritual master, or if not spiritual master, the higher authority, what is their vision when, for an ordinary, person, when there is a opportunity or resources, they are sincere, but then, they are concerned for the resources, then, they are less sincere. I would put it that way. So what should be the our understanding, as well as like what is the vision of the spiritual master or Krishna towards such persons whose sincerity varies according to resources?
Oh, okay. See, Krishna as a supreme Lord will certainly understand. He is the Lord of, he understands the situation one is in. But it is up to us right now. I mean, this whole talk was from our perspective, not so much from what Krishna is thinking about us. I mean, I'll give another example. Just like if you see ISKCON's history itself. In ISKCON's history also, if you see carefully, initially everybody joined the movement as a full-time person, right? But in the mid-80s, suddenly our movement realized that they cannot take care of householders, correct? I know a very nice devotee. She's the son of my teacher. She's the teacher of my son's English language. She's from New Zealand or some country like that. She and her husband were both full-time devotees in ISKCON in the 1980s. Given up job, everything. They were just sitting in the temple and serving. Suddenly in 1984 or 85, their spiritual master called them and said that we cannot maintain anybody in our temple. So all of you will have to leave and find your own thing. Because economically, it was becoming a strain on the temple. And this happened worldwide. Now, if you look at our movement's history, that time, most of the people left. They left not only the movement in terms of leaving the temple because they were told to go, but they even left Krishna consciousness. The reason is very simple. Because, my voice has become low, someone is saying, I don't know. Yeah, so they left. Yeah, they left because they were asked to go, and most of them didn't have, they had given up their job long time back, 7-8 years they were sitting in temple. They didn't have any money, social security, nothing. Suddenly they had to go out of the temple also due to change in policy of the temple. They couldn't maintain their spiritual life also, most of them. This lady whom I know, she maintained very nicely, but she was a very rare exception. Very less people maintained. It said that less than 10% of the devotees at that time could maintain their spiritual life. Now, why did that happen? Because suddenly you lost all your resources, right? You were sitting in the temple and temple was giving you prasad, accommodation, everything. Suddenly the policy changed and now you have to leave the temple. So then now you may say, okay, leave temple, but practice bhakti. But then what happened is that for 7-8 years, you were not in touch with the outside world only. Now suddenly you have to become in touch with the outside world. You have to raise money. You have to buy your own flat. You have to rent your own apartment, whatever it is. It became difficult for most people. So most people historically gave up Krishna consciousness at that time. Okay, so this is again substantiating the same point that I'm saying, that your sincerity is indeed connected to your resources. One may say anything otherwise, but very few people continued. They are continuing nicely. But for them also, it was a very big struggle. It was not easy for them. Okay, so somebody had some talent, they continued, but they're very less in number. If you see number-wise, they're very less. Okay. So from Krishna and spiritual master, or if you see broadly from Varnashram perspective, that is why such situations are never considered welcome only. That is why if you see the Bhagavad Gita, that's why it focuses so much on ensuring Krishna is again and again telling Arjuna to do his swadharma, right? Because he doesn't want Arjuna to be in that situation like a beggar without anything. Dhritarashtra had, and our Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana had sent a message through Vidura that to the Pandavas, right, before the war, that you people stay in the forest only. That is only good for you. But Krishna did not appreciate that. As in Krishna didn't agree with that, and neither did the Pandavas agree with that, right? The Pandavas also could not accept it. Yudhishthira did not say yes to that whole proposal. He said that, no, nothing doing. We are going to fight and we are going to get the kingdom back. Because this is not the message only of the Shastra, where you land up in such troubles unnecessarily. Does that make sense?
Yes, Proji. But like my question, like Krishna answers, he says that he is neutral to all, but especially he is favorable to his devotees. So, like on exception basis, if we see, then he does make special favors for his devotees, and even like we see that like in history, like those people who stick to their sincerity even in the amidst of great difficulties, they are remembered a lot. But like speaking of from ordinary perspective, like ordinary people, it again changes. So like
See,
we
that's why
cannot judge.
we need a system where the ordinary person can also survive, right? That system
Yes,
is the system of the Bhagavad Gita. Please try to understand. Krishna doesn't want a system where just some rare fellow is put into all kinds of trouble and he will do bhakti, right? The ordinary, I mean, the system, the varnashram which is there is a system where we want everybody to be stable so that anybody who even has a slight desire to become a devotee should be able to become a devotee, right? It's not
yes,
become so complicated that only a few who have lost everything, lost their money, lost everything, only they are continuing. I mean, is that the kind of bhakti we want, or is that the kind of bhaktas only that we want? No, it's not that. That's the point. Does that make sense?
yes, 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 Proji. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And also see, by nature of the world, some troubles are anyway going to come, no matter what we do. Okay, so
Yes,
not that everything can always be protected all the time. So that
correct.
trouble and the test is anyway going to come. But why artificially create it? That's the point.
Okay, okay. Yes, Proji.
Why fall in trouble unnecessarily?
Yes.
When you have
Thank
the
you.
ability to fight it out, one must fight it out. Correct. There's no question. Right. Now, Draupadi raising her hand and calling out to Krishna was when she couldn't do anything about it. Correct. If Draupadi, if you're in an aeroplane and there is some problem, calling out to Krishna is the perfect thing to do. Correct. But if you're in a car and the car is giving trouble, you cannot call to Krishna at that time. You are supposed to put your car aside and stop the car immediately. If you have understood that there is some trouble in the car. I mean, you understood, right? So that is there.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Prabhu.
Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji. Haribam. I have unmuted.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, this is Sunita actually. Prabhuji, actually my query was regarding that the shlok only which you mentioned, Janmashwarya by Kunti Maharani. So although you said that it is more of a philosophical prayer, but if we read the translation and the purport, so it clearly says that like in the purport Prabhupada has mentioned, by once uttering the holy name of the Lord, the sinner gets rid of quantity of sins. Just a second. Just let me read that. Being materially advanced means taking birth in an aristocratic family. It's all right. Where it mentions that people like the essence is that people who are materially exhausted, means poor, right? They can chant sincerely.
Yes.
It says a materially puffed up person may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the name in quality. Therefore, the four principles of material advancement, namely high parentage, good wealth, high education, and attractive beauty, are, so to speak, disqualifications for progress on the path of spiritual advancement. So this is what he says. And I think it's like a general in the translation also, it says that your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. So the other way around will be that people who don't have these can be sincere. So I'm not able to understand this.
Why are we, see, the Bhagavat is addressing your heart. The Bhagavat verses are addressing our heart. Material impoverishment is a state of your heart, it's a state of consciousness. That means even if you have crores of rupees in your bank, you truly understand in your heart, not as a hypocrite, you truly understand that ये पैसा मेरा कुछ नहीं करने वाला जीवन में. nothing. All this is nothing at all.
But Prabhuji, how will that feeling come when we have so much of money? How will that feeling of helplessness come?
Yeah. So that is a good point. That feeling also comes, you truly understand. And let me tell you one thing, that even people who have a lot, uninvited, so many troubles are there for everybody in the world. It's not that when somebody is rich, then all his desires and feelings are getting fulfilled. Which person does it happen like that? I mean, even if you see the Pandavas' life, of course, that was an extraordinary life where they had all types of troubles despite all their wealth and beauty and strength and everything, correct? But even an ordinary person, even you and me included in that, despite all the money that we have in our bank account or whatever, we truly understand this. So, see, my basic point is this material impoverishment, this particular feeling which is there, it's a feeling to be cultivated internally. It's not that literally, externally, the scriptures are asking us to lose all our wealth. I mean, not to send our child to a very good college. Now, for example, you want to send your child education, you will send her to the best college, right? Like you have sent her to a law college, the best law college you have sent, because that's what makes sense. It's
Yes.
not that they will think that my daughter will become a devotee if I send her to the lowest quality college where poorest education is given so that she will not get puffed up. No, that's not the point. You have to send her to the best college in town, and at the same time give this understanding that despite whatever you do in your life, your heart is always going to be empty without Krishna. So you will have to cultivate that devotional aspect of your life, right, by your sadhana and so on. Okay, so please try to understand this, that these verses of Queen Kunti, or in general of the Bhagavad, even if you want to, when we applied, at least at sadhaka level, when we applied in our life, it is an application at the level of the heart. It's not that literally I have to become disfigured, I put acid on my face and look ugly, or I stop going to college, or I stop getting any kind of education and remain anguta chap, or go to a very low grade college just so that I don't get puffed up. No, you will only become underconfident by that. Please try to understand, when you send your child to a very good college, get good education, then there is a confidence that will come in that person, and with that confidence a willpower will come. On the other hand, when somebody doesn't accomplish anything, they tend to be extremely underconfident and a failure in their life. So we need to understand this. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is, see, when you walk all that path, then that understanding also comes to you. I'll tell you what, see, Kunti has walked the life, right? She has seen all these things now. Now she feels that let these troubles come again and again. See, it's a prayer of the heart. We cannot take those feelings which are in Kunti's heart at that time. We cannot even imagine what she's going through, despite of all her challenges. She's at that time when she's facing Krishna, and try to think that all these things have to actually come externally in our life. Are you getting, Mataji, the point that I'm making here?
Yes, Prabhuji, actually, I agree with what you say. That you said that people they don't have a right to prerogative to become spiritual or all. I agree to that. But at the same time, we cannot make a general statement that those who are poor, they cannot be sincere.
Okay. Yeah, I got the point. I will not make that. Certainly, I mean, even see, that poor person will have to get resource or something according to that level. I answered Shamlila Prabhu, right? See, this poverty, resources, everything is relative in a way also, if you see. Are you getting? I made that point in answer to Shamlila Prabhu's question. That when we are talking about resources and comfort, it is also in terms of your current situation. Okay.
Yes.
So that poor person also, whoever that, in whatever level they are, at least the best of that, when they reach only, they will get some sanity in their mind. It is seen. It's factually seen. I mean, you see in our community also, right? By and large, the devotees who contribute the most, you just look around, whether it is Bombay, Pune, Delhi, wherever, they are people who have come from good families with resources, right? I mean, even if you see at GBC level, if you see someone like Gopal Krishna Maharaj, see Giriraj Maharaj, even Radhanath Maharaj, or you see all these people, they were not, they came with a particular background, right? As in, It was not that poverty drove to Krishna or something. Are you getting my point?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Preaching, whom do we preach to? You know, in our voice, we always talk about this Shrestha preaching. You have heard this term, Shrestha preaching?
Yes, Prabhuji, you just mentioned, I understood, but that's what my question was from the very beginning. Like my parents also, my father also used to say that ISKCON is only for like rich people. And I also used to think that why don't we go and preach in slum? Initially, when I was not convinced about this philosophy, I always used to think that why are we preaching to just, well-to-do people? Why can't we go and preach in the slums? And people who are poor, Prabhuji, if they become spiritual, if they depend on Krishna, then won't Krishna will help them and make them a little bit, better in their resources?
No, Mataji, it doesn't happen like that. See, please try to understand that we preach to Shrestha people because only these people have time. They have time in their life. Mataji, 16 mala karna padta hai humko, and we do all these other spiritual activities. For this, you have to be someone, stable in your life. If you don't have stability, there are so many people who have to work so many 12, 14 hours a day like an ass just to maintain the body. People, people who struggle a lot just to get their two ends meet. They don't have the bandwidth in their mind. You understand what is called bandwidth? Our mind needs a bandwidth to practice spiritual life. You need time. Time means not just external time. मतलब एक mind में time चाहिए ना कि भाई बाकी सब ठीक है अभी चलो ये करता हूँ करके. It's a fact that if someone has to go a lot into spiritual life, their basic needs must be met, at least at their level. See, you can't equate everybody's basic needs. That's the reason, and only a Shrestha can contribute. That person has that bandwidth, he has the ability to do something. Otherwise, the person is just lost. And Krishna has set up Varnashram system in the world, Mataji. Krishna is not going to see. Krishna would have given some, gift to Sudama or, some people like that Krishna may have done. But that is not the normal way in which Krishna acts in this world. Are you getting my point? Krishna has set up Varnashram system for your prosperity and for your stability in life. It is up to us, each of us in this world, to ensure that Varnashram is followed properly so that everybody reaches their level of balance and equanimity. You understood? As I told you, every level is different. But at least they have to reach that level. Then only some sanity will come and everything. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And resources means not only means money, Mataji, it also means even relationships. Even in our ISKCON society, one major challenge our sannyasis and all say is that most people don't have a stable husband or a wife only. For them to practice bhakti becomes very difficult. Now see, we may say why you need, we may say na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim. We may say na sundarim, but I need Rasundari at home, right?
No, practical, yeah.
Philosophical prayer. I don't need any, woman or whatever. But the thing is, a man needs his wife. A woman also needs her husband. You need that stability in your relationship. That resource you need, right? If that is taken away, you cannot be sincere. You see the Western world. I mean, the average, Gaurang Prabhu or someone was telling, I heard, the average time a Westerner can practice Krishna consciousness currently is 3 years. Westerner means white-skinned person.
Caucasians.
They practice, it seems, in America, Europe. After that, why do they give up? Not because they have not understood philosophy. Ye baki sab problem resources ka. For them, resources means relationship is also a resource only, na. You have your parents with you. Same parents, na. Same mother, same father. All of us have. It's not that our father got married 4 times, mother got married 5 times. We have the same husband or wife for 20, 30 years, right? We have the same set of children. There is a stability in our resources, right? That gives us in power. It's a simple fact.
Mental stability.
Yeah, how will you do it? So in the Western world, that's a big reason why it doesn't. So if you look around, you will understand that what is being said is a fact. So that's what all means by regulating the senses, ensuring that there is stability.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Last question. This is, I don't know who, Damodar Prabhu or somebody.
Hi, yes, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, this is related to the last point where you said the environment, and one of the point was that we should tell our children about the topics like which are a bit difficult. So how should we ensure it that they hear it somehow, or should we ourselves tell them, or so, which is a bit difficult. Like what has happened is touching the not touching the various parts, or say be conscious about it. It was told, and somehow till now we are not informed. Like we spoke, but then it becomes a difficult thing to tell to the children. So should we ensure that they hear it through some medium, say in the school or some programs which they're attending or groups, or is it mandatory that we should tell them?
But the person who says should be such that they have the relationship. The best relation is actually for these things, especially with daughters, the mother is the best. Mother should have that level of conversation with her daughters, I feel personally, where she's able to talk these things to her. Because as a girl grows up, she should be having that freeness with her mother, to talk about these matters also. Because they are going to encounter all this. They are going to encounter all this. May not be in small school, but in higher school, colleges, they will encounter all this. They will see all kinds of these things. So I personally feel that it is good if the parents only talk. If not, then at least some family member who is very, very close, whom they are very open with. But best is the parent, at least some things. Because all kinds of abuse can happen at any age with anybody. So it is very important that that awareness, age appropriate talk should be there. That talk should be very age appropriate. But I personally take that mother is the best person to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think the last one is, so, we have heard in Krishna consciousness that even if we have no resources, we should be sincere. See, certainly we preach. There are many things which we preach, in a very preachy way we tell people. Kuch nahi to bhi sincere rehna chahiye ye sab. It's good. It's good to do this preaching also. It is good to hear also, because sometimes we will have troubles. So that time we can remember these teachings and fight it out. But as a general principle, what life is supposed to be is what we discussed today. Okay? Hare Krishna. Yeah, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki